Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue my story through computing, and we get to the Commodore 64, the second computer I had. Now, to tell this story we'll have to sort of sidetrack a little bit. So, I've had my Spectrum now for 2 years. My mum and dad are absolutely shocked that I still use it, because I was a notorious kid for jumping from thing to thing. But I started getting into music at this point, and I joined Gateshead Library. And in Gateshead Library, they had some BBC computers. Now, we're just getting BBC computers at my high school at this point, but you could go into the library and you could just sit and play on the BBC. And one day, like many instances with computing and gaming consoles, I walked in there and on it was Elite. And it just blew my mind. I couldn't get over it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Not only does this computer feel like a real computer, it actually looks awesome. So, my mum and dad were asking us, what did I want for Christmas? Did I want a new computer? And they give us this, it was another lesson I suppose, but give us this option. If I was to upgrade my computer, I had to sell the Spectrum. Now, that was a decision I wasn't going to make quickly. And I knew I wasn't going to get a BBC because it was just ridiculously expensive. That Saturday, as fate would have it, me and my friends went to Newcastle, and in Games Workshop, which was a Dungeons and Dragons figure shop, they had a Commodore 64, and it was playing Thing on a Spring. And it was just the intro demo where it was playing the music, and it just blew us away. I couldn't get over the sound, and that tune just like burrowed into my head. I went home and I saw one of my friends, and I was telling him all about it, and he was like, oh, you're not going to believe this, but my dad's just bought me a Commodore 64. I was like, you're kidding, aren't you? So we ran up to his room, and the only game he had was Way of the Exploding Fist. Oh, I was just totally sold on it, absolutely sold on it. So I went back and I said to my mum and dad, this is the computer for me. I sold my Spectrum to my mum's friend's son from work, and then put the rest of it towards it. And obviously the spec of the Commodore 64 was much more powerful than the Spectrum, just for the fact that it had 3-channel SID chip sound, which was just flawless. The CPU, it didn't have color crash. It had 64K, and the games just looked better. I know that's a killer thing for the Spectrum, but it did look better. Here in the UK, we didn't have disk drives. We all had tape decks. Everything came on that, and the machine was the original bread bin version at the time, but I absolutely loved it. Now, the 64 did go through a few sort of upgrades at the time. It went to the C one later on, which was based around the 128, the C128, which never took off in this country. I remember seeing it in Shopping City in Gateshead, and I thought, wow, this is awesome. But at the end of the day, to me, it was just a Commodore 64 with a bit extra memory, and it did look a bit futuristic looking. But the C was not something I was going to upgrade my bread bin for. I loved that computer the way it was. I didn't want a disk drive because I knew it would be astronomically expensive. But when I did get my pack, it came with I suppose it was like a novelty thing, but it was a little plastic keyboard that snapped on the top of this Commodore 64, which allowed to turn it into a little 2-octave music piano, for want of a better description. And I loved this. This just blew me away, because at the time I was just starting to learn to play the guitar, and I could knock out simple drum patterns with it, with the SID chip, and I could mess around with it and get a bass line going, and I used to make like little backing tracks for my guitar, and that totally got me well hooked into it. And it was about this time that the computers were really taking off at school, and I was looking forward to doing in my options computer studies. I was told by the head of computers, Mr. Rowlands, Funky Rowlands, that I wasn't good enough, and I wouldn't be allowed to take it, which was weird, because I was allowed to take everything else I wanted to take in options, but I don't know why, he just wouldn't let us do it. So that sort of knocked the programming out of us, and I concentrated on music. Now, when the 64 first was released, one of the reasons I wasn't going to jump in it straight away was because of the UK adverts, and I'll show you that now.
Commodore 64 home computer has an unusually large memory. Remember? It also has all the peripherals you're ever likely to need. Monitors, plotters, printers, disk drives, and a vast range of software. Which means you'll get so much more enjoyment out of your home computer. The Commodore 64. Remember the enormous memory, but don't forget the peripherals and software.
Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you. In a world of fun and fantasy, and ever-changing views, and computer terminology, Commodore is news. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you.
Wonder how many more computers they would have sold if they had used the American advert. Anyway, above you can see the computer compendium. This is the one that I had. This is what my 64 was. It came with a couple of games. I think Adrian Mole was one of them. I never bothered with it. Like I say, I used that little keyboard more than anything. That taught me music theory and so much that little thing. And to be honest, that's my mum and dad just ordered that one because it was the only one they could find. It's wonder how things would have turned out if I had just got a normal Commodore 64 with a couple of games. But never mind, I digress. Now, one of the main things I've got to thank the Commodore 64 for is the fact that not only did it really help me with my music and the career I had in music later on, but also it set off my second career, which was becoming an IT engineer and network engineer. And funnily enough, I started several years later in North Tyneside Council as a network hardware engineer. Gets a phone call to go to a high school. It turns out that the head of computers there has completely knackered the network. He's destroyed about 6 computers. The damage was outrageous. It only turns out to be Mr. Rowlands. He nearly had a wobble out when he realised I was the engineer who'd come to fix all these problems. So revenge is sweet, as they say, but never mind. So getting back on track with the 64. So after the 128 failure, there was rumours of a Commodore 65. Now the 65 would have been an awesome machine. There were some prototypes made, and they do exist. And if you look around, you can see them. Basically, what it was a much more enhanced 64, very closer to an Amiga type spec. Now, because they were working on the Amiga at the time, they felt like it was too close to what the Amiga could do in many ways. To be honest, the C65 could do things that the Amiga couldn't do, but they canned it, and I think it's a beautiful looking machine. But this leads me into the future of where the 64 goes, and very like the Spectrum in what was now the new one, the Spectrum Next, some guys from Germany are getting together and they're developing the Mega 65, which is basically an FPGA enhanced version of the Commodore 65. The development kits are out now, but only as a limited number. I know I'm sure there was about 1,000 which were dropped. So they're working really hard, as Germans do, to make sure that there's no problems with the machine. They don't want to release it and get things fixed as they go. But I don't know how they've managed it, but they've managed to use the Commodore name, and they've managed to get the original molds from the 65 and design the new Mega 65. So that's the prototype one that you see there. This is what it's going to look like when it comes out. And it's drop dead. I think it's phenomenal. Now, just like the Next, it can use cores. And because it's so powerful compared to the Next, you can actually run a Spectrum Next on this as a core. They've pretty much finished that design already. Make sure all the peripherals work, all the games work from the 64, and where it goes next is very like the Spectrum Next, enhanced games, etc, etc. So let's see what happens, and fingers crossed this all comes out quite soon, and we'll see where the future is. So now we're going to go through my top 10. Remember, my top 10, not the best top 10. Commodore 64 games of all time. So, like the Spectrum Next, this is my top 10 games. Basically, this isn't trying to say there's better games out there, but these are the ones that I love. So, number 1, Monty on the Run. Another game that influences from its soundtrack. It's just awesome. I'm going to let it play for a little bit. The game is like a twist on a Manic Miner game. You've got to find the little coins to get out and escape. There's some great game design in this. Some of the sprites and they're just fantastic. But the soundtrack is phenomenal. And it really shows what the Sid chip can do. And this is what the Spectrum had lacking in it. But, you know, I'm sure many people have played Monty on the Run before and know the famous music. Number 2, the game that got me totally into it, Thing on a Spring. Now the thing with Thing on a Spring is, the music's absolutely awesome, the game's really good, but it's also got one of the things I couldn't stand about the Commodore 64, and it's demoing it now. The SID chip could do 3 channels, and with 3 channels you could have an absolutely fantastic soundtrack, but you wouldn't be able to have effects. And when you put effects on, this is what happened. It had to cut some of the channels, and I used to find this dead annoying. So in fact, I used to just sit with Thing in a Spring on the main screen listening to the music. I never actually played the game very much, but it is a really good game, and it's such a shame. Now with the Mega 65 coming out, it's got 3 SID chips and a couple of other sound cards in there as well. So hopefully, you're going to get it sorted. Game 3, We Have the Exploding Fist. So, 2-player on this is just phenomenal. It's still a great fighting game now. The graphics look great. The soundtrack is just absolutely awesome. A bit over the top of the old fighting noises, but still. And like I say, many a joystick was broke with the competitions we used to have at Steve's house. It was just awesome. It is a fantastic game. If you've never played it, you've got to give it a go. And the sequel's pretty good as well, but it's more of a RPG. But give it a go. It's a really good game. Game 4, Stunt Car Racer. So Stunt Car Racer is a little bit of a different racer game. It's basically driving around on a roller coaster, I think of that way. So you have a car, you drop on the track, you have like a sort of health bar across the top, and every time you hit the ground at a certain sort of pressure, it starts to crack. So the idea is to get around the track as fast as you possibly can without cracking the bar at the crop. See there, it's just cracked a little bit there. Now if you take a turn too quick or too harsh, you will literally put massive cracks in there and then it's game over. Everybody's played this. If you haven't played this, give it a go. Stop what you're doing, get on it now. Km5 Commando. So I think everybody knows what Commando is, but it's based on an arcade classic. Again, has probably one of the best SID chip soundtracks of all time. Gameplay is fantastic. I'm sure there was a bug in it somewhere where you couldn't complete it or something, but I know they did fix it. But yeah, it's just another classic game. It just really shows how good the SID chip was, and the fact that Commodore put it in the 64. It's just a no-brainer. Can you imagine what it would be like without the SID chip? I can't. And if you ever play this game on other consoles, I mean, yeah, the Spectrum can't do it as well as this, but, you know, say like an Amstrad CPC, for instance, it's not a bad copy, but the sound's just terrible compared to this. But again, if you've never played this, you've got to have this in your collection. It's a must-have. Game 6, Rambo, First Blood Part 2. Now the thing with Rambo, it is a clone of sort of Commando really, but they just do it so well in the music and the little touches. phenomenal. And I think this has got to be top 10 SID tunes of all time. It's got to be in there. Now what they did different from other games is they really wanted the soundtrack to be spot on. So they used all 3 channels. As you can see, there's no sound effects from firing a gun or explosions or anything like that, because they're concentrating on the audio. And to be honest, I prefer that. I know a lot of people wouldn't. They'd probably say, well, you know, without the sound effects it's just not the same. But you cannot sacrifice that tune. It's just awesome. Again, if you've never played it, get it, try it, it's awesome. Game 7, Ya Kung Fu. So this is one of my all-time favourite arcade games. If I had an arcade cabinet somewhere, it would be one of these. I love this game so much. I love the tune. I love the fact that you had to fight different guys. It was one of the first games like this. And it's very arcade accurate. The graphics are slightly different, but the soundtrack's bang on, sound effects all bang on. Again, if you've never played this, you're missing an absolute classic game, and it's a really good version of the C64. Give it a go, see how far you can get. I can complete it. As you can see, there's certain moves that can pretty much win the game. I never told you that. Game 8, Mercenary. Now, Mercenary, I discovered this game by accident. My friend lent us some stuff and I put it on and I was like, what is this? This game had me hooked for months. It's sort of like Elite, but it's not. But as you'll see, you start off, you're in a spacecraft, you're out of control and you literally disengage your Nova drive, hyperdrive, whatever you want to call it. And you crash land on this planet. And you just go exploring. Now, at the time, nothing literally did this. It was sort of Elite type graphics, but it was on a planet, and you could, if you saw a car, you could get in and drive it. If you saw a plane, you could get in and fly it. It was just, I can't even remember what you had to do, but I just remember playing a lot of it, and it is groundbreaking. And if you get a chance to try it, I think they had a sequel called Damocles. I could be wrong. But it was a great game. So there's your crash spaceship sticking out of the ground. And if you look around, you'll see a fighter, which you can jump in and fly. It's as simple as that. Give it a go if you haven't tried it. It's a brilliant game. Game 9, Spy vs. Spy 2. So, Spy vs. Spy 2, another game that I came across by accident. Basically, 2 spies, white spy, black spy. So basically, 2 spies are dropping on the island. The object of the game is to find 3 pieces of a rocket and escape. You have various things at your disposal. You have a map, you have some like acid, some rope, gun, exploding coconuts, shovel. You can make traps as you go around searching for the bits and bobs that you need to complete the rocket. You can try and kill your other spy, which is always worth doing. Obviously you can see it's split screen. You can't really cheat because you're too busy doing what you do on your screen. So this gave me and my mates loads of hours of fun. It was just a brilliant multiplayer game. I wish somebody would develop a new version of it. I think it would work, but never mind. Again, if you've never played Spy vs. Spy 2, give it a shot because it's a fantastic game and the AI is pretty sneaky as well. Game 10, Pit Stop 2. So for my last game, I'm picking Pit Stop 2, another great 2-player game. Spent hours playing this. The twist of this is basically it's a standard racing game with the added bonus of now you have to take in consideration pit stops. So as you're driving along, you'll see marks appear on your tyres, so they start wearing, and you've also got a fuel gauge. It's really tricky to do pit stops. It takes a bit of skill. I'll quickly sort all other clips so it brings up a pit stop, so we don't have to spend too much time watching, so you can get what I mean. So you're driving along, you see the pit lane, you pull in, and then you've got a little steering wheel, and if you want to refuel, that's what it is. You click on that little guy and he starts refueling the car. This guy starts changing tyres, but it's a bit tricky, so whoever's best at this can be, you see, the top guy hasn't set the fuel away properly. He's just standing there, he's not fueling the car. Now he's been taken away, the bottom guy's got it fueled, and he's just changing the tyres, so all the tyres are spot on. He's miles ahead of the other guy. The guy still hasn't noticed that it's not refueling at the top. And then obviously, once you've refueled, you can be on your merry way, and you'll probably have an advantage of about 30 seconds. Again, if you never tried it, give it a shot. It's an absolutely great little game. Right guys, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, tickle the bell so you know when the next one's coming out. The next one will be on the Amiga, which will be quite a big one. And that should be probably sometime mid next month.